We left off last lecture, or the last component of this lecture, with the themes of judgment and apocalypse coalescing in the arrival of Odysseus and the wrath of the gods being visited upon the suitors. And one of the questions I had asked last time was whether the judgment was just. And with that, we certainly see a sense of moral absolutes being drawn in the Odyssey. And this is one of the things that's fascinating about it for those who are minded to regard this as a mere cultural text, as an expression of the worldview of the Greeks, and the sense that it would be true of them but not true elsewhere. There seems to be a sense quite clearly expressed in the Odyssey and the Iliad and elsewhere, and we find this in, quite frankly, every ancient text, that there are certain moral absolutes and boundaries which are not acceptable and which the gods themselves will punish, and punish with severity in their time. We will see one such instance very shortly when we look at Oedipus the king, in which incest is punished, and obviously also parricide, the murder of his father. But here we will see it in the judgment upon the suitors for how they have transgressed the boundaries of hospitality in Odysseus's own home, and the way in which they plotted also to take his life, and certainly that of his son Telemachos. We know that for a fact. But the fact is they have not yet murdered Odysseus, and so there is some sense in which perhaps the judgment seems to fall too hastily. But we were tipped off at the very outset in the very first lecture when we began the Odyssey in the very opening lines, when the gods themselves had a council. One of the main features of an epic, by the way, is the council of the gods, in which Athena comes before her father Zeus and implores him to consider the plight of Odysseus. Odysseus, who was renowned for his piety towards the gods. He never ceased to offer tribute to them and sacrifice, and also towards his justice towards men. He was a thoroughly admirable man, and yet he was languishing away, hidden on the island of the nymph Calypso, a man thereby robbed of his reputation. And this, said Athena, was unjust. She didn't appeal to the fact that Odysseus was her favorite and that she wanted her way. She appealed to a higher standard there, to the fact that it was unjust, and were they not to do anything about it, no one would regard the gods any further as being worthy or needing to be obeyed, because of, quite frankly, the gods do not reinforce good behavior and punish evil behavior. And she hit the right chord there, because of course we learn that Zeus himself had been meditating on the murder of Agamemnon, the chief of the Greek host that had returned from Troy. Now, he returned to a terrible reception. His wife, Clytemnestra, and her lover, Aegisthus, plotted to murder him, and they succeeded in that. And it was only the deeds of his son, Orestes, in executing vengeance upon them that appeased the gods there, although there's some in other texts, other tragedies, the actions of Orestes are also problematic, because of course he's murdered his mother, and that's also not to be dealt or left alone unpunished. Nonetheless, here Zeus seems to side with what Orestes did and recommends Telemachus likewise to take up arms alongside his father and to do something about this and prevent such an atrocity from occurring again. And so the gods are judging here and making a moral absolute, and they're allying themselves with Odysseus. And Athena is the chief instrument of that. So the means of wisdom here, the goddess of wisdom, wisdom personified, if you will, is now going to be implementing the justice that she and the godhead, in this case, the entire assembly of the Olympian gods, but chiefly Zeus, has decided that the suitors deserve. And there is a strong sense here then of not only the fact that we have judgment coming, but also apocalypse. And this word apocalypse, with which we conclude our Bibles, the revelation of St. John, or the apocalypse of St. John. I think apocalypse is a better word, quite frankly, because it is the Greek word. But also there's something in apocalypse which is not there in Revelation. A revelation is something being revealed that can be new, whereas apocalypse, it was there and it was hidden. Just like Calypso had once hid Odysseus and we couldn't see him. Now he has been revealed from her grasp, and what was once hidden is now going to be revealed. Now the tension in the scenes was up to this point the fact that Odysseus had revealed himself too quickly. He'd given his name away to Polyphemus, the Cyclops, which is why he was kept from his land for so long, because of Poseidon's great anger, at wrath at his the blinding of his son. But now he is home, and even there, the path of wisdom for him was to keep his identity hidden until such time as he would be revealed by the goddess Athena. And now we've come to that time. As I said at the end of the last lecture, or the snippet of the lecture, the contest of the bow would be that moment, a decisive moment of revelation when Odysseus would reveal himself. Actually, I've given away the plot there to some degree, because where we left off, Penelope had told Odysseus that she had proposed, even though he said that the prophecy which had just been revealed referred to Odysseus, because she herself heard it, a voice say that Odysseus was coming home and that the suitors would be avenged. She didn't believe it. And Odysseus said, "You should believe it." And she said, "Well, it's too late anyway, because now I'm about to hold the contest of the bow, and it will be too late. And whoever strings the bow and shoots the arrow through these axe handles, all 12 of them at a distance, that will be the man that I will marry." And at that point, Penelope's fidelity will be broken. Odysseus's house will be overthrown. But of course, the man to whom she's speaking here is none other than Odysseus himself. And so, as I say, the moment of apocalypse is at hand, in the sense that he will reveal himself, having been hidden by Athena up to this point. And furthermore, judgment will ensue. And so these two things, judgment of the gods is strongly being presented here. There's an injustice that has happened, and it will not be tolerated by the gods. There's an absolute here. But also that revelation, this apocalypse, the sense of things that were hidden being revealed, is strongly connected to that. And so there's an interesting analogy that can be drawn between the book of the Apocalypse, the last book in the Bible, and final judgment as well. It's interesting how these things coalesce and are common ground there. But we left off, as I say, in book 19 with that scene in which the contest of the bow had been proposed. And we'll pick up with book 20. And with Athena, I'll pick it up with some little introduction, but Athena comforting Odysseus in the wake of what he has heard here, because she tells him that he has to endure the suffering that is within it. And he lies awake at night, devising evil for the suitors, we're told, line 4. And out of the palace issued those women who in the past had been going to bed with the suitors, full of cheerful spirits and greeting each other with laughter. But the spirit deep in the heart of Odysseus was stirred by this. They're acting deplorably, immorally. And the question for him is whether to spring on them and kill each one, or rather to let them lie this one more time with the insolent suitors for the last and latest time. But the heart was growling within him. And now the epic simile arises. And as a bitch facing an unknown man stands over her callow puppies and growls and rages to fight. So Odysseus' heart was growling inside him as he looked on these wicked suitors. He struck himself on the chest and spoke to his heart and scolded it. "Bear up, my heart. You have had worse to endure before this on that day when the irresistible Cyclops ate up my strong companions. But you endured it until intelligence got you out of the cave, though you expected to perish." So he addresses himself there, encourages himself, looks at himself, and at that point, Athena enters the scene and further encourages him. And what does she say? Why are you wakeful now, O most wretched of all men? Here is your house, and here is your wife in the house, and here is your son, and he is the kind of son any man would long for. So if you're disconsolate, if you are simply growling like a female mother dog over her puppies, be cheerful at what has happened. You have not yet been uh, unconcealed, revealed for who you are. Nonetheless, you are actually finally home. And then resourceful Odysseus spoke in turn and answered her, yes, O goddess, all you've said was fair and orderly. Yet still, there is something the heart inside of me is pondering. How, when I am alone against many, I can lay hands on the shameless suitors. And they are always here in a body. And here is a still bigger problem that my heart is pondering. Even if by grace of Zeus and yourself I kill them, how shall I make my escape? It is what I would have you think on. So Odysseus is already plotting and scheming. He already has the problem of the multitude of the suitors, and he being just one man. In addition to that, even if he should slay them, there are their relatives that are going to be outraged at the killing of their finest in his midst. And Athena responds in turn, stubborn man, anyone trusts even a lesser companion than I, who is mortal and does not have so many ideas. But I am a god, and though it all I keep, and through it all I keep watch over you in every endeavor of yours. And now I tell you this plainly, even though there were 50 battalions of mortal people standing around us, furious to kill in the spirit of battle, even so you could drive away their cattle and fat sheep. So let sleep take you now. There is annoyance in lying awake and on guard all night. You will soon be out of your trouble. So she spoke and scattered slumber over his eyelids. So the Odysseus is, even though he is on the verge of the final resolution of his plight, he is troubled by what he sees. And this is, again, this is part of the realism of Homer, is to present psychologically plausible responses in these things and to present them in an exhaustive detail. And there's a sort of a dialogue going on here. And I think Athena speaks well here and gives good omens. And the good omens that arise in the morning are of a shepherd. So from the house 105, a mill's woman sent him an omen. She was nearby where the shepherd of the host had set up his mill hands. And there 12 women in all had been bending to grind the wheat and the barley flour, men's marrow. The others, etc. And she says this, and speaks the sign for her master. Father Zeus, you who are Lord of the gods and many people, now you have thundered loud from the starry sky, though there is no cloud. You show this forth, a portent for someone. Grant now also for wretched me this prayer that I make you. On this day let the suitors take for the last and latest time their desirable feasting in the halls of Odysseus. For it is they who have broken my knees with heart-sore labor as I grind the meal for them. Let this be their final resting. So what is the omen? There's thunder from Zeus, even though the sky is clear. And so yet another omen, another a sign of doom. The doom of the suitors is at hand. And the preparations for the festival ensue. The suitors arrive. Odysseus tests the cowherd. Philœtius finds him to be loyal to him as well. The suitors arrive, and violence ensues. The suitors are actually rather hysterical at a prophecy that ensues as well. And I'll pick it up in, where am I going to pick it up? I think I will pick it up in book 21, where Penelope now does what she had told Odysseus she was going to do, namely set forth a contest, a trial, a judgment also of sorts. She's going to judge which one of the suitors will marry her. So it is once again a scene of judgment. And the judgment is simply going to come here by the means of a contest. But she fetches the bow of Odysseus and she promises marriage to the best archer among them. And that is how she will finally conclude her days, being wed to a man whom she would rather not. So Telemachus at this point assists her. He sets up the axes at a distance, 12 of them in a row, as I say, the axe handles with the hole through them, rather narrow hole, and the arrow has to go straight through them. So it has to be drawn and let fly at great force, because of course it will be perfectly flat. And as anyone knows who understands ballistics, there is a sort of an arc to an arrow, and so the man who does this will have to be extraordinarily strong, in addition to obviously accurate in his shot. So Telemachus sets up the bow and seeks to do so himself, but fails, and the suitors fail. At this point, Odysseus reveals himself to Eumaeus the swineherd, and Odysseus decides, and this is a decisive moment, he asks for a try. Oh, let me just step back very briefly here. Before this point, just before this point, in line 212, we get the sense, and he speaks to the suitors as if he's acting on behalf of the gods. Let me pick that passage up there. He says, I'll pick it up at 209. Now I see that of all my men, it was only you two who wanted me to come. I've not heard one of the others praying that I should return again and come to my own house. Therefore, I will tell you the truth, and so it shall be. If by my hand the god overmasters the lordly suitors, then I shall get wives for you both, Eumaeus and the cowherd, for you both. And grant you possessions and houses built next to mine, and think of you in the future always as companions of Telemachus and his brothers. But come now. So the judgment has happened for them. They will be rewarded for their fidelity, for their long faithfulness to him in the midst of no rewards, and in fact of many persecutions and sufferings on their part. But note that he speaks as if he's acting against the suitors on behalf of the gods here. He understands himself as an instrument of divine justice, which of course he also is. Now, so the slaughter of the suitors, in which will soon ensue, is a destructive act, of course, but it also has an element of creative action insofar it is the work of the gods, and it will restore justice, a justice that is currently lacking. So he will create something that had been deprived of his kingdom for a while. So the contest of the bow will ensue, and he asks for a turn at the bow, and they're indignant at the very prospect of this man, this stranger who looks so disheveled and unsuitable to be in their midst, because of course the prize is to marry Penelope. And he says, let me try my strength and hands and see if I still have force in my flexible limbs. Line 283, by the way, as there has been in time past, or whether my wandering and lack of good care have ruined me. This is a genuine question on Odysseus's part, no doubt. So he spoke, but all of them were wildly indignant and feared that he might take the well-polished bow and string it. Here's the problem for the suitors thus far. It's not that they failed to shoot the bow. They can't even string the bow. They're not strong enough to bend the bow in order to put the string around the end of it, never mind missing it with the arrow. But so he spoke, and now Antinous scolded him and spoke out and named him. Ah, wretched stranger, you have no sense, not even a little. Is it not enough that you dine in peace among us who are violent men and are deprived of no fair portion? But listen to our conversation and what we have to say. But there is no other vagabond and newcomer who is allowed to hear us talk. The honeyed wine has hurt you. It has distracted others as well, who gulp it down without drinking in season. It was wine also that drove the centaur and distracted him, etc., etc. And she says, I announce trouble for you as well. If ever you string this bow, you will meet no kind of courtesy in our group. But we shall put you into a black ship and take you to King Ashetos, one who mutilates all men. There you will lose everything. Sit and be quiet and drink your wine. Line 310. Nor quarrel with men who are younger than you are. Circumspect Penelope said to him in answer, Antinous, it is neither fair nor just to browbeat any guest of Telemachos who comes to visit him. Do you imagine that if this stranger, in the confidence of hands and strength, should string the great bow of Odysseus, that he would take me home with him and make me his wife? No, he himself has no such thought in the heart within him. Let none of you be sorrowful at heart in his feasting here for such a reason. There's no likelihood of it, etc. So note what happens here. It's in the same way that we saw in the passage where Euryclea, Odysseus's nurse, almost discovered who Odysseus was. And in fact, she saw the scar and touched the scar. She knew who he was. And then we have interceding between that a long digression of, in that case, narrative of how he got the scar. It goes on for pages. Here, likewise, the contest of the bow, Odysseus asks for the bow, and he's about to receive it. But between that time, there's going to be a pause, and we're wondering what is going to happen. And the suspense is extremely high at this point. And Odysseus finally is sent away, and Odysseus does get his chance, and he easily strings the bow, in fact. And this is the extraordinary part. He strings the bow with ease and takes his shot. I'll pick it up at line 404. Now resourceful Odysseus, once he had taken up the great bow and looked it all over, epic simile, as when a man who well understands the lyre and singing, easily holding it on either side, pulls the strongly twisted cord of sheep's gut so as to slip it over a new peg. So without any strain, Odysseus strung the great bow. Then, plucking it in his right hand, he tested the bowstring, and it gave him back an excellent sound like the voice of a swallow. A great sorrow fell now upon the suitors, and all their color was changed. And Zeus, showing forth his portents, thundered mightily. So now the doom is at hand, the thunder in the clear sky. Hearing this, long-suffering great Odysseus was happy that the son of devious devising Kronos, Kronos' son being Zeus, had sent him a portent. Note that Kronos is here likened to Odysseus as well, also deceptive, also like Athena, also like Odysseus. So they share this in common. God, like Odysseus, is devious and had sent him a portent. He chose out a swift arrow that lay beside him uncovered on the table. But the others were still stored up inside the hollow quiver, and presently the Achaeans must learn their nature. Taking the string and the head grooves, he drew to the middle grip, and from the very chair where he sat, bending the bow before him, let the arrow fly, nor missed any axes from the first handle on. But the bronze-weighted arrow passed through all and out the other end. He spoke to Telemachos. Telemachos, your guest that sits in your halls does not then fail you. I missed no part of the mark, nor have I made much work of stringing the bow. The strength is still sound within me, and not as the suitors said in their scorn, making little of me. Now is the time for their dinner to be served, the Achaeans in the daylight, then follow with other entertainment, the dance and the lyre. For these things come at the end of the feasting. He spoke and nodded to him with his brows. And Telemachos, dear son of godlike Odysseus, put his sharp sword about him and closed his own hand over his spear and took his position close beside him and next the chair, all armed in bright bronze. So the moment that we have been waiting for is now at hand. The contest of the bow has transpired, and Penelope's dream of the eagle attacking the geese, which was part of the divine plan, has now been is now about to be fulfilled. Odysseus has also revealed himself to be the man who will marry Penelope, but the only man who will marry Penelope is the man who has already married Penelope. There was no need for him to do the contest of the suitors, the contest of the bow. That was irrelevant to the judgment, but he's now revealed that he is that same man who still has the strength in his fingers to do the deed that only Odysseus himself could have done. And Zeus, the deceiver, the devious devising son of Kronos, endorses it with thunder. So now it ensues. And Odysseus himself is being tested by Athena herself. He needs at the very last to prove his strength and his courage in the midst of terrible odds. He himself was not only a few moments ago in the narrative sleepless at night for fear that he would be overwhelmed, but not only by the number of his opponents, but by their families if he by chance succeeded in slaying them all. So his courage is going to be tested like no other incident that he's experienced in his life thus far. So now Odysseus reveals himself finally, and then of course the battle ensues. How does he reveal himself? Well, with these words. They scolded. So first of all, I'll pick it up this. Odysseus takes an arrow and looses it, aims at this man, Antinous, the worst of the suitors, the one that is the most contemptible, the one that the audience feels deserves every judgment. He aims at the chief of them, Antinous, who's drinking from a two-handled goblet of gold, and he shoots him through the throat. And the suitors are outraged, of course, at this act, and there is no weapon to be found. And they cry out and scold Odysseus, line 26, book 22, in words full of anger, saying, "Stranger, it is badly done to hit men. You will never achieve any more trials. Now your sudden destruction is certain. For now you have struck down the man who was far the greatest of the youth of Ithaca. For that the vultures shall eat you." Each spoke at random, for they thought he had not intended to kill the man. Poor fools, and they had not yet realized how over all of them the terms of death were now hanging. But looking darkly upon them, dark like the thundercloud of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus answered, "You dogs, you never thought that I would any more come back from the land of Troy, and because of that you despoiled my household, and forcibly took my serving women to sleep beside you, and sought to win my wife while I was still alive, fearing neither the immortal gods who hold the wide heaven, nor any resentment sprung from men to be yours in the future. Now upon all of you the terms of destruction are fastened." So he spoke, and the green fear took hold of all of them. The green fear, the new fear sprung in their midst, and each man looked about him for a way to escape sheer death. Only Eurymachus spoke up and gave him an answer. "If in truth you are Odysseus of Ithaca, come home. What you have said is fair about all the wickedness done you by the Achaeans, much in your house and much in the country. But now the man is down who was responsible for all this, Antinous. It was he who pushed this action, not so much that he wanted the marriage or cared for it, but with other things in mind, which the son of Kronos would not grant him, to lie in wait for your son. and kill him, and then be king himself in the district of strong-founded Ithaca. Now he has perished by his own fate. Then spare your own people, and afterward we will make public reparation for all that has been eaten and drunk in your halls, setting each upon himself an assessment of 20 oxen. We will pay it back in bronze and gold to you until your heart is softened. Till then, we cannot blame you for being angry. So, a peace offering. You've done a just thing here. We will pay reparations. As we know, the gods will not be satisfied with this course. Then, looking darkly at him, resourceful Odysseus answered, Eurymachus, if you gave me all your father's possessions, all that you have now, and what you could add from elsewhere, even so I would not stay my hands from the slaughter until I had revenge for all the suitors' transgression. Now the choice has been set before you, either to fight me or run, if any of you can escape death and its spirits. But I think not one man will escape from sheer destruction. So he spoke, and the others' knees and the heart within them went slack. But Eurymachus cried a second time to the suitors, Dear friends, now this man will not restrain his invincible hands, but since he has got the polished bow in the quiver, he will shoot at us from the smooth threshold until he has killed us all, one and all. Then let us all remember our warcraft. Draw your swords and hold the table before you to ward off the arrows of sudden death. Let us all make a rush against him together and try to push him back from the doors and the threshold and go through the town. So the hue and cry could be most quickly raised, and perhaps this man will now have shot for the last time. Eurymachus has a quick mind, quick wits. So he spoke aloud and drew from his side the sharp sword, brazen and edged on either side, and made a rush at him, crying his terrible cry. At the same time, noble Odysseus shot an arrow and struck him in the chest by the nipple, and the speeding arrow fixed in his liver, and his sword tumbled out of his hand on the floor as he, sprawling over the table, doubled and fell, and on the ground, on the floor, the good food was scattered in the two-handed goblet. He struck the ground with his forehead in his paroxysm of pain, and kicking with both feet, rattled the chair, and over his eyes the death mist drifted. I will skip over this a bit. I don't need to present the entire battle scene, but Melanthius brings arms to the suitors and is tied up for his pains. Odysseus at this point sees Athena in the likeness of Mentor appear and hails her in that guise, Mentor, 208, help me from hurt and remember me, your companion and friend, who have done you much good. We two grew up together. He sees an old companion. He spoke so, but thought it was Athena, leader of armies. On the other side in the palace, the suitors cried out against her, and first to threaten was Agelaus, son of Damastor. Mentor, never let Odysseus by talking persuade you to fight against the suitors and defend him. Consider what we propose to do, and I think it will be accomplished. When we kill these men, the son and the father, you too shall be killed in their company. For what you are trying to do here in the palace, you shall pay for it with your own head. But when with the bronze we have taken away the lives of all of you, all the possessions which are yours, both here and elsewhere, we shall count in with those of Odysseus, nor will we suffer your sons to go on living here in your walls, your halls, nor your daughters and loving wife to go about in the town of Ithaca. So they threaten him not only with the loss of his life, we're going to kill you, and we're going to kill your family, and we're going to take everything that you possess. So this is an unjust threat. It's not the threat, it's the what they will do, which is extraordinarily unjust. And boy, they've said it to the wrong person. Athena in her heart grew still more angry, And she scolded Odysseus in words full of anger, saying, "No longer, Odysseus, are the strength and valor still steady within you, as when, for the sake of white-armed illustrious Helen, you fought 9 years with the Trojans, ever relentless, and many men you killed there in the dreaded encounter, and by your counsel the wide-wayed city of Priam was taken. How is it now, when you have come back to your own possessions and house, you complain instead of standing up to the suitors? Come here, friend, and watch me at work, and standing beside me, see what kind of man is Mentor, the son of Alcemos, and how against your enemies he repays your kindness." She spoke, but did not yet altogether turn the victory their way. She still was putting to proof the strength and courage alike of Odysseus and his glorious son. And she now, likening herself to a swallow in their sight, shot up high aloft and perched on a beam on the smoky palace. So they see her, and she wants, note that the testing continues on. It's part of the judgment. It's part of the discerning process, the fire of the battle that will go on. And I will skip over it. As I said, the battle ends, the defeat and death of all of the suitors. And the singer and the herald alone are spared from their fate within the hall. And Eurycleia, the nursemaid, is summoned. And the faithless maids are punished. But Eurycleia will not be allowed to be the one who determines whether that is. Plainly, Odysseus does not trust his old nursemaid to be the judge there. And Odysseus cleans the palace, cleanses it of the impurity of the blood. Eurycleia goes back, tells Penelope. Penelope comes down to Odysseus in this extraordinary scene of one final test. And it really is extraordinary that after all this time, and after Odysseus has come home, revealed himself, punished the suitors, killed all the unjust, and is reunited with Penelope, she won't speak to him. The man who's shot the arrow through the axe handles will nonetheless not speak to him, even though the nurse Eurycleia tells him that it's her husband in her presence. The hard, tough, wise heart of Penelope holds fast to the end. And even, and this is interesting, even Odysseus, as tough as he is from all of the trials that he's had to endure, breaks at this point in the presence of his wife. I'll read the interaction because I just think it's so splendidly well depicted here. Eurycleia says that she found Odysseus like a lion around him, etc. And now he is here after all of these evils. And Penelope answers line 58. Circumspect, Penelope. Dear nurse, do not yet laugh aloud in triumph. You know how welcome he would be if he appeared in the palace. To all, but above all to me and the son we gave birth to. No. But this story is not true as you tell it. Rather, some one of the immortals has killed the haughty suitors in anger over their wicked deeds and heart-hurting violence. For these men paid no attention at all to any man on earth who came their way, no matter if he were base or noble, so they suffered for their own recklessness. But Odysseus has lost his homecoming and lost his life far from Achaia. Now, what's going on here? She's heard the prophecy. Odysseus herself has confirmed that this is what the prophecy means. His nursemaid, Eurycleia, someone that she trusts, is telling her that this is Odysseus, and she still won't believe it. What is going on? Part of it, I think we can connect to the distrust of appearances and the fact that gods regularly disguise them. And of course, they've just slaughtered a great host of suitors, so it's not unreasonable to think that a god would have done this. And after all, they were unjust, so that they've got precisely what they deserved on that front. Fair enough. But I think there's a bit more, and it's psychologically plausible, which is simply the fact that we have met a highly depressed woman in the person of Penelope, who simply cannot dare to hope that it's true, lest she be disappointed and her heart be broken inconsolably. I think that's a part of it as well. And again, I think this is part of the narrative realism of the scene. Think of it, 20 years after all. But then the beloved, I'll pick the narrative back up. Then the beloved nurse Eurycleia said to her in answer, "My child, what sort of word escaped your teeth's barrier? Though your husband is here beside the hearth, you would never say he would come home. Your heart was always mistrustful. But here is another proof that is very clear. I will tell you, that scar which once the boar with his white teeth inflicted. I recognized it while I was washing his feet, and I wanted to tell you about it, but he stopped my mouth with his hands, would not let me speak, for his mind sought every advantage. Come then, follow me, and I will hazard my life upon it. Kill me by the most pitiful death if I'm deceiving you." He has the scar. That's a good sign of revelation. Something that she had not seen has now been revealed. It's not hidden anymore. And what a sign. Who bears a scar on his thigh and looks exactly like him? Who could it be? Circumspect Penelope said to her in answer, "Dear nurse, it would be hard for you to baffle the purposes of the everlasting gods, though you are very clever. Still, I will go see my son." So it could still be a god in disguise. He just has a scar. That's a good disguise. That's part of the disguise. I'll go down and I'll look upon them, and I'll look upon the man who killed him. And they make plans to deceive the people because, of course, what Odysseus initially feared in that scene, once again, was that the relatives of the suitor in their wrath would also come upon him and in their multitudes and kill him. And so now they have to still deal with the threat that is represented there. But Odysseus then encounters Penelope, and Penelope, as I say, refuses to accept that he is who he says he is. And she, I'll read the encounter because it's simply too good. Anoint him with oil, suffused him. So Athena is helping now. Suffuses him with great beauty, makes him taller and thicker to behold. On his head arranged his curling locks that hung down like hyacinth petals. And as when a master craftsman overlays gold on silver, and he is one who is taught by Hephaestus and Pallas Athene in art complete, and grace is on every work he finishes, so Athena gilded with grace his head and his shoulders. Then, looking like an immortal, he strode forth from the bath and came back then and sat on the chair from which he had risen opposite his wife. And now he spoke to her, saying, "You are so strange. The gods who have their homes in Olympus have made your heart more stubborn than for the rest of womankind. No other woman with spirit as stubborn as yours would keep back as you are doing from her husband, who, after much suffering, came at last in the 20th year back to his own country. Come then, nurse, make me up a bed so that I can use it here. For this woman has a heart of iron within her." Circumspect Penelope said to him in answer, "You are so strange. I'm not being proud, nor indifferent, nor puzzled beyond need, but I know very well what you look like when you went in the ship with the sweeping oars from Ithaca. Come now." You looked exactly like you do right now, exactly. And that was 20 years ago. So don't tell me that you're a man. "Come then, Eurycleia, and make up a firm bed for him outside the well-fashioned chamber." And now here's the trick. That very bed that he himself built. Put the firm bed here, outside for him, and cover it over with fleeces and blankets and with shining coverlets. So she spoke to her husband, trying him out. But Odysseus spoke in anger to his virtuous-minded lady. "What you have said, dear lady, has hurt my heart deeply. What man has put my bed in another place? but it would be difficult for even a very expert one, unless a god coming to help in person were easily to change its position. But there is no mortal alive, no strong man who lightly could move the weight elsewhere. There is one particular feature in the bed's construction. I myself, no other man made it. There was the bole of an old olive tree with long leaves growing strongly in the courtyard, and it was thick, like a column. I laid down my chamber around this and built it until I finished it with close set stones and roofed it well over, and added the compacted doors fitting closely together. And then I cut away the foliage of the long-leaved olive and trimmed the trunk from the roots up, planting it with a brazen adze well and expertly, and trued it straight to a chalk line, and making a bedpost of it, and bored all holes with an auger. I began with this and built my bed until it was finished, and decorated it with gold and silver and ivory. Then I lashed it with thongs of oxhide, etc., etc. There is its character, I tell you. But I do not know now, dear lady, whether my bed is still in place, or if some man has cut underneath the stump of the olive and moved it elsewhere. So he spoke, and her knees and the heart within her went slack as she recognized the clear proofs that Odysseus had given. But then she burst into tears and ran straight to him, throwing her arms around the neck of Odysseus, and kissed his head, saying, "Do not be angry with me, Odysseus, since beyond other men you have the most understanding. The gods granted us misery in jealousy over the thought that we too always together should enjoy our youth and then come to the threshold of old age. Then do not now be angry with me, nor blame me because I did not greet you as I do now at first when I saw you. For always the spirit deep in my very heart was fearful that some one of mortal men would come my way and deceive me with words. For there are many who scheme for wicked advantage. For neither would the daughter born to Zeus, Helen of Argos, have lain in love with an outlander from another country if she had known that the warlike sons of the Achaeans would bring her home again to the beloved land of her fathers. It was a god who stirred her to do the shameful thing she did. And never before had she in her heart this terrible wildness, out of which came suffering to us also. Now, isn't this interesting? The lesson of the Battle of Troy and the actions of Helen are also on Penelope's mind. She was deceived, and if she can be deceived, so can I be deceived, and thus my actions. But now, since you've given accurate proof describing my bed, which no other mortal man besides us has ever seen, but only you and I, and there is only one serving woman, Actor's daughter, whom my father gave me when I came here, who used to guard the doors for us in our well-built chamber. So you persuade my heart, though it has been very stubborn." So she embraces him, and they are reunited, and then he tells his story of the 310 and all, following the Ciconians, the Cyclops, the land of Aeolus, Tiresias in the underworld, the Charybdis, and the Scylla, the island of Ogygia, and the nymph Calypso who detained him, etc. He tells her it all. And then the goddess gray-eyed Athena thought what to do next, and as she thought, the heart of Zeus had full contentment of the pleasure of resting in bed with his wife and of sleeping. She stirred from ocean the golden-throned early dawn to shine her light upon him, and Odysseus rose up from his soft bed and spoke to his wife, telling her, "Dear wife, we both have had our full share of numerous trials now. Yours have been here, as you cried over my much longed for homecoming, while as for me, Zeus and the other gods held me back from my own country as I was striving to reach it. But now that we two have come to our desired bed together, you look after my possessions, which are in the palace. But as for my flocks, which the overbearing suitors have ruined, many I shall restore by raiding, others the Achaeans will give me until they have filled up my sheepfolds. But now I shall go to our estate with many orchards to see my noble father, who has grieved for me constantly. But I tell you this, my wife, though you have your own understanding, Presently, when the sun rises, there will be a rumor about the men who courted you, whom I killed in our palace. Then go to the upper chambers with your attendant women and sit still, looking at no one, and do not ask any questions." So off he goes. And he goes, of course, to find his father and be reunited with him. Again, the circle turning of justice and the kingdom restored, and his old man. Now, when he comes to his father, what do you think he's going to do to his father at this point? Is he going to run to him and embrace him? No, he tests him. Of course he does. He can't simply reveal to himself who he is. He has to test him. Why on earth would he do this to the poor old man? He finds his father on the farm, and he is eventually recognized, but he first tests him before this happens. Awful. But again, it's in keeping with the Greek awareness of the existence of things like truth, justice, beauty, goodness, the justice that the gods themselves defended, these absolutes, these moral absolutes, but also the awareness that things are never as they appear and need to be tested and discerned. So this critical mind, which we see exemplified in the person of Odysseus, follows with him throughout the rest of his journey. There's a final battle that takes place there. And what we hear is that the suitors were indeed stirred to vengeance here. And Agamemnon himself will comment on Odysseus's return. Let me look at this in book 24 here. Down in the underworld, there's a commentary on it. So the gods have seen what has happened, and he has been reunited with his father, but he also goes and meets Agamemnon, or is heard of there. So Agamemnon, line 186, "We were destroyed, and still at this moment our bodies are lying uncared for in the halls of Odysseus." It's the suitors who've gone down to the underworld, having been slaughtered and not being buried for this. And this is an atrocity again. It needs to be dealt with. And they're complaining to Agamemnon about the fate that they've experienced at the hands of Odysseus. And he says, "Our bodies are lying uncared for in the halls of Odysseus, for our people in the house of each man know nothing of this. They who have washed away from our wounds the black blood and laid us out and mourned us, for this is the right of the perished." So for all of the vengeance and justice that's been meted out upon them, there is now an injustice insofar as they've not yet been buried. And this seems to be a taboo, to fail to bury them, and Odysseus must do so. So how will we deal with the bodies here? "The soul of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, answered him, 'O fortunate son of Laertes, Odysseus of many devices, surely you won yourself a wife endowed with great virtue. How good was proved the heart that is in blameless Penelope, Icarius's daughter, and how well she remembered Odysseus, her wedded husband. Thereby the fame of her virtue shall never die away, but the immortals will make for the people of earth a thing of grace in the song for prudent Penelope. Nor so did the daughter of Tyndareus fashion her evil deeds when she killed her wedded lord, and a song of loathing will be hers among men, to make evil the reputation of womankind, even for one whose acts are virtue.' So these two were conversing each with the other, standing in the gates of Hades, underneath the earth's secret places. And the others went from the city, come to the country, Laertes there, etc. The suitors arrive, and the suitors, as I say, want their vengeance. And we are told that they would have their vengeance, but the gods put a stop to it. "531. Hold back, says Athena, daughter of Zeus of the Aegis. Hold back, men of Ithaca, from the wearisome fighting, so that most soon and without blood you can settle everything." So spoke Athena, and the green fear took hold of them, And in their terror, they let fall from their hands their weapons, which fell all on the ground at the cry of the goddess speaking. Striving to save their lives, they turned in flight towards the city. With a terrible cry, much enduring Odysseus, gathering himself together, make a swoop like a high-flown eagle. But the son of Kronos, because now Odysseus is going to pursue them and kill them as well. And then Zeus says, enough. The son of Kronos then threw down a smoky thunderbolt, which fell in front of the gray-eyed daughter of the great father. Then the gray-eyed goddess Athena said to Odysseus, son of Laertes and son of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, hold hard, stop this quarrel in closing combat, for fear Zeus of the wide brows, son of Kronos, may be angry with you. So spoke Athena, and with happy heart he obeyed her, and pledges for the days to come, sworn to by both sides, were settled by Pallas Athena, daughter of Zeus of the Aegis, who had likened herself in appearance and voice to Mentor. Mentor, the form in which we first met him in appearance to Telemachos, now speaks. The wise old counselor, the wise man, speaking to Odysseus, counsels him to cease the bloodshed, lest he anger Zeus and all the gods. Let there be mercy as well. Put an end to this. Let there be peace. And with that, the battles that began back in Troy, instigated by the gods, have now been finally concluded by the gods. And with that, we have the end of the Odyssey. I hope you found it as wonderful as I always do. Thank you.